So a very wonderful way to welcome in the new year by remembering the example, the life and the teachings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, a truly extraordinary personality, even when it comes to the spiritual field. This morning I was thinking of what words would remind me, or what words I would think of or would come to mind when we say Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And many different words come out. Associate of Krishna, of Radha and Krishna. Sharp intellect, prodigy, scholar, bold, courageous, visionary, revolutionary, lion guru, acharya. So many words come to mind. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was certainly an extraordinary spiritual master, an extraordinary preacher of the holy name. Vajradapi katorani kusumadapi komalam. It is said about the Lord and also about Vaishnavas that they can sometimes be harder than a thunderbolt and also softer than a rose. So even though Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was extremely bold and courageous and outspoken in word and deed, when it came to establishing the proper conclusions and practices of the Vaishnava Dharma, he was also internally extremely humble. So a Vaishnava's external aggression does not indicate any arrogance. It actually indicates a certain humility and a devotion. Inasmuch as Arjuna's aggression on the battlefield didn't indicate his arrogance, rather it indicated his humility because he had surrendered to Krishna and Krishna's instructions. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada used to many times speak very strongly. He spoke words like, "I kicked them in the face with boot," things like that. And which of course devotees would do well not to imitate. Otherwise they will get a dose of their own medicine. But the point is that Srila Prabhupada was genuinely so humble. But in order to establish the preaching mission, he had to do these things to clarify matters. And usually, as they're about to depart from this world, then their humble nature really then becomes manifest to the vision of everybody. So Srila Prabhupada also, when he was passing away in Vrindavan, he was begging forgiveness from all his god brothers because he said in the course of the preaching mission, one way have said so many things and done so many things. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also was a perfect acharya. Bold and courageous, revolutionary when it came to preaching, at the same time internally completely humble. Even in his dealings with his own devotees, what to speak of others, he would always conclude by saying, "Dasosmi." If anybody said, "Well, thank you very much, Gurudev for giving us this or that or saying this," then he would always end up saying, "Dasosmi." Dasosmi meaning, "I am your servant." Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's life is very extraordinary also. I can see Rupa Vilas Prabhu sitting here, Hare Krishna. He's written a whole book on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He's done extensive research. Perhaps he should have been sitting here to speak after all these years of researching Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life. But I'll narrate just a few of the important events that happened in his life and later speak a little bit about his contributions to our mission. Some of these events are of course well known, but nevertheless they are important enough to be repeated, even though sometimes they may seem to be very small events. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in this world in 1874. He was the son of Kedarnath Datta, whom we know of course as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. His mother's name was Bhagavati Devi. He was born in Jagannath Puri, and his father Bhaktivinoda Thakur at that time was the district magistrate in Puri, a very high government position, which also included overseeing the administrative affairs of the Jagannath temple. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur played a very important role in administrative reforms in the Jagannath temple. So he was staying in a building called the Narayan Chata, which today houses the Gaudiya Mutt. And that was where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appeared in 1874. And his father named him Bimala Prasad. Bimala Devi or Vimala Devi, you see in Eastern India, the V becomes B. So Vimala Devi becomes Bimala Devi, like that. So Vimala Devi is the internal potency of Lord Krishna or of Jagannath. And it is said that she was residing in the spot where the Jagannath temple is today, even before the Jagannath temple was built there. So Jagannath had to actually take her permission that, look, I am coming here too. So she happily gave permission, but she had a condition. The condition was that I want your Mahaprasadam. So whatever bhoga is offered to you, which becomes Mahaprasad, should then first be immediately offered to me. And till today, this custom is followed. That the Jagannath Mahaprasad, that is the prasad, the bhoga that is offered to Jagannath and which becomes Mahaprasad, is not distributed to anybody else till that Mahaprasad is offered to Vimala Devi. And then that actually becomes Mahaprasad. This is the tradition, the long time tradition that has been there in the Jagannath temple. So she is none other than the internal potency Yogamaya of the Lord. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur named his son after Vimala Devi. Vimala Prasad means the mercy of Vimala Devi. When the child was barely 6 months old, it was time for the Jagannath Rath Yatra. And the house Narayan Chata is right on the Grand Road, which is the road that connects the Jagannath temple to the Gundicha temple. It's a couple of kilometers, and that's the road on which the Rath moves, the cart moves. And as we all know, that the Rath Yatra or Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra move of their own sweet will, of their own accord, not simply because the devotees are pulling the cart. So historically there have been occasions, and even in recent times there are occasions, when the cart refuses to move. No matter what the devotees may do, the cart just stays put. And when the Lord wants to move, then the cart moves, when the devotees even pull it lightly. So on this occasion, in the year of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance, Lord Jagannath deemed it fit to halt in front of this house, on this road. And he stayed there for 3 whole days and wouldn't move. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur organized a massive Harinam Sankirtan program at that point. And at that time also, his mother, Bimala Prasad's mother Bhagavati Devi, took the child in her arms onto the chariot. And he grasped hold of Lord Jagannath's lotus feet. And at that time the garland from Lord Jagannath's neck fell. And everybody understood that to be a sign of very special significance, foreboding the events that were to come of his greatness in the future. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was an infant prodigy. He did wonderful things even as a child. He exhibited such determination that even adults cannot do. At a very, very young age, even as he was an infant, one time he ate a mango. And this, of course, is a legendary incident that all devotees have heard of. But nevertheless, it's important enough to mention. He ate a mango that had not yet been offered to the Lord. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur saw that, he mildly reprimanded the child. The child was really very small, maybe 2 years or something like that, or maybe a little older. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur mildly reprimanded the child that you shouldn't do this. You should only eat after things have been offered to Krishna, and you have eaten it without offering. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took it so much to heart, and he felt, oh, what a great offense I have done. I have eaten this mango without offering to Krishna. So he took a vow that he would never again eat mango in his life. And he maintained that vow all through his life. Maybe in England it's not a big deal to not eat a mango. But in India it is a big deal. Especially you get all the different varieties of mangoes fresh. Not like you get here, deep frozen after many months of being grown in some distant country in South Africa or South America or India or something like that. Fresh, ripe, sweet mangoes when they come up of different varieties, So everybody likes to eat them. And he remained very staunch in his determination. A determination that reminds one of Dhruva Maharaj, who even at the age of 5 was so determined that he would go into the forest. And he remained staunch there and eventually succeeded, and the Lord appeared before him. As he grew, his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, used to train him very nicely. The atmosphere in the house was very devotional. It is said that there was constant Harinam going on, there were bhajans going on in the house, the worship of the deities were going on. He used to hear the recitation of the Bhagavad Gita, and before he was 7, he was able to remember all the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita and even speak eloquently on these verses, explaining them. He was able to give some short lectures on all the verses of the Bhagavad Gita as a 7-year-old child. He had been regularly hearing his father's discourses even before that. And at a young age, maybe even around 7 when they were in Calcutta, as his father was building the Bhakti Kuti, the Bhakti Bhavan in Calcutta, a deity of Kurmadev appeared from the earth. It was found when the excavation work or the construction work was being done. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta used that deity of Kurmadev and worshipped. It was around the same time that his father initiated Bhaktisiddhanta in Harinam and the Narsingha mantra. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta displayed as a young boy very keen intelligence. He had a photographic memory. Whatever he heard once or he read once, he would remember. And he displayed an extreme genius when it came to mathematics and astrology. So very quickly he became a proficient astrologer. And very soon, even as a young lad, he was given a title of Siddhanta Saraswati. Even as a teenager, he was given this title by his teachers. They were astonished to see his proficiency in astrology and mathematics and his sharp intelligence and memory. And it reminds one somewhat of the initial pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who in his early days, till the age of 16 or so, displayed pastimes of scholarship in grammar and logic and so on. He didn't so much display his devotional qualities. Of course, here Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did display devotional qualities, but the scholarly pastimes also were very much in the forefront. A scholar in astrology, and he would go as a young lad, have a Chirukumar Rajasabha where all young boys would gather together to debate. They would gather at a place called Beedon Square in Calcutta, and all the young boys would come and they would debate on various aspects of religion and philosophy and sociology and so on and so forth. And then at the age of 18, he was, of course there are so many numerous incidents that happened even in his boyhood, extraordinary incidents like that, where he would hear from his father and he would start explaining the Shastra and so on. Anyway, at the age of 18 or so, he was admitted to the Sanskrit college in Calcutta. And he was more interested in reading all the books in the library than he was in the academic curriculum in the college. That he would remember just by hearing the lectures. He didn't need to go back home and study and do any extra work. And one by one he started reading every book available in the library. And the teachers were astonished at his knowledge. And then when he was teaching, learning grammar, his teachers also advised him that you've mastered all this, but I think we think that you should dedicate your life for the study of and teaching of Sanskrit grammar. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, that's not what human life is meant for. Human life is not meant for studying, for only studying grammar. Of course, grammar is essential to learn when we learn languages. So a certain degree of proficiency in grammar is essential, but that's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to become a pure devotee of Krishna. So he had strong differences of opinion with his grammar teachers. And eventually he realized the futility of astrology and grammar and all these things, and he gave them all up. He gave up astrology, even though he would definitely have had a very bright career as an astrologer and a scholar of grammar and Sanskrit and logic and so on. And then he quit. He dropped out of university. Another thing that many people who came to Prabhupada would do later years. He dropped out of university, interestingly, because he thought that if he were to become a graduate from the university, then the pressure from his family to marry would increase, because he would now be known as a scholarly graduate from Calcutta University, a graduate in Sanskrit. So it better to have the reputation of being a dropout. And then there won't be many people coming for marriage proposals. So he knew that he would get harassed for marriage. So he dropped out. And he took up employment with the king of Tripura. And he took on editorial work and so on. And eventually he quit that as well. Maybe after 7 or 8 or 10 years, he quit that. He came back. He started accompanying his father. Anyway, he was doing that even as from a younger age. He used to accompany his father at different discourses, and he was a keen listener. He would hear everything. His father would also discuss his writings with him, even though Bimala Prasad was very young. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote his commentary on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or was translating that, he would read out excerpts, or he would read out the book to young Bimala Prasad. In this way, Bimala Prasad became extremely proficient in the scriptures. And there is mention that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was extremely happy with this boy. And there are occasions when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would speak on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, like one time when they went to Puri, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur would hear. What immense satisfaction for the father to be able to hear such scholarly and devoted lectures from his own son, and at such a young age. So this went on for some time. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was urging his son to take initiation. But he said, I will not be your Diksha Guru. Of course, there were different types of Diksha, that's a subject in itself. But he wanted him to take Diksha from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who was a very renounced and devoted Babaji, who used to live in Navadvip. And when he was very young, probably when he was about 24 or so, he first saw Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And he was very struck by the way in which he would sing his bhajans. And he wrote it down. And later he would teach that to his disciples in the years to come later. And his father was very stern with him. He told him, you must take initiation from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta went to him and requested for initiation. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was such a renounced Babaji, and he had no interest at all in these things. He said, no, I have decided not to initiate anyone. I'm just going to do my bhajan here. So don't disturb me. When Bhaktisiddhanta persisted, then he said, okay, if Mahaprabhu tells me, then I will do it. The next time he came to ask him and begged him for initiation, he said, oh, I forgot to ask Mahaprabhu. And the third time he came, he said, look, just by scholarship, virtuousness, and so on, one does not become eligible for initiation. In this way he kept postponing it. There are different opinions amongst the Gaudiyas about how many times Srila Bhaktisiddhanta approached Gaur Kishore Das Babaji before Babaji actually agreed to give initiation. Some people say on the 4th time he agreed, and some people say on the 13th time he agreed. It reminds one again of Ramanujacharya, who had to approach Goshtipurna 18 times before he agreed to give him the mantra. And in our Sampradaya, it reminds one of Narottam Das Thakur, who had to approach Lokanath Goswami many times before Lokanath Goswami agreed. Narottam Das Thakur would secretly go and offer various types of menial services to him. And even though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had instructed Lokanath Goswami in a dream to do so, he was very reluctant. And finally he did so. So similarly, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji also finally agreed and accepted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as his only disciple. And he named him Varshabhanavi Daita Dasa. Varshabhanavi Devi Daita Dasa. Varshabhanavi Devi is Srimati Radharani, because she is the daughter of a Vrishabhanu. So in the Sanskrit language, Vrishabhanu, that which comes from Vrishabhanu, the daughter is Varshabhanavi. So Varshabhanavi Devi Daita. Daita means one who is dear to. So Varshabhanavi Devi Daita means Krishna. And Das means servant. So he became Varshabhanavi Devi Daita Dasa. And he used to call himself by that name because that was his initiated name. And he was profoundly influenced by the devotion of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, who had settled down in Navadvip. When Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji accepted Samadhi, when he departed from this world, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta heard about this and he came there. He had not yet taken sannyas at that time. And he saw that there was some commotion going on there. many of the local sadhus, who were very, very questionable in their conduct and lifestyle, they had gathered there and were arguing amongst themselves as to where and how and who would perform the last rites for Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Because Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was renowned for his austerity, his devotion, and so on, these sadhus knew that wherever his samadhi was built, it would be a place where they would be able to get a few rupees every day. Because people would come and give donations, so it was a source of livelihood for many of them. So that was their interest in staking claim to the right to do the last rites of Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came there and said, no, you people have no right to do this, because you're not leading a pure life. I am the only initiated disciple of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta knew very well that these people were not leading pure lives. And when there was an argument and a commotion, then he spoke out an open challenge. He said, any one amongst you who has not had illicit sexual relations for the last 1 year, you can come forward to do this last rites. No one stood up. Then he said, last 6 months. Then he said, last 3 months. Last 1 month. Last 3 days. And at that time, the police superintendent of that area had come because he got news that there's some commotion going on there. There's a possible law and order problem that could happen here. So he rushed there with his policemen. And then after Bhaktisiddhanta made this challenge to the assembled sadhus, he asked Bhaktisiddhanta, how can you prove whether they've had any illicit relations or not? So he said, okay, I will take them at their word. If anybody says he has not done this, then I will accept him at his word. And still nobody came forward. They were all struck by Bhaktisiddhanta's purity. And even the police superintendent was struck with wonder. He offered obeisances and went away. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur took it upon himself to do the proper samadhi rituals and placed him nicely in samadhi. But another controversy broke out at that point. Because Gaur Kishore Das Babaji had been extremely humble, as is a Vaishnava of his caliber. And in his extreme humility, which is often self-deprecating, he had announced in his lifetime on some occasions that when I die, my body which is so worthless, it is only fit for the dogs, it should be dragged through the streets of Navadvip. Such was his intense humility. So some foolish people, they reminded Bhaktisiddhanta. He said, yes, he wanted this to be done, so we must do that. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur spoke very strongly. And he said, you people are so foolish, you don't know the ways of Vaishnavas. We should understand from the example of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, who, when Srila Haridas Thakur passed away, he dealt with his body with so much respect. He actually lifted his body, held the body close to his chest, and he danced with his body while chanting Harinam. And with utmost respect had the samadhi for him on the banks of the sea, on the shore of the sea. This is how we should deal with the transcendental body of great acharyas and devotees like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. So in this way he explained to them how one should understand the teachings and the words and the life of great devotees. So eventually Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur went on and decided that now he had a mission ahead of him. At the age of 31, he went into the forest and took on an extremely severe vow, just like Haridas Thakur did, of Nirjan Bhajan, of solitary chanting of the holy names. Of course, that cannot be imitated. We can try that, but we will definitely not succeed, because this kind of bhajan, like Haridas Thakur chanting 192 rounds of the Mahamantra every day for months and months together, and surviving on very little food, practically no food at all. This was something really astonishing. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was experiencing the ecstasy of pure devotion to Krishna. And there were occasions, it is said, where he would come out of the forest and people would see him running, crying out, Ha Krishna, crying out Krishna's name in a trance of devotional ecstasy. And this was only when he was a young man. And eventually, later, he came out and decided that he would have to take part or spearhead a preaching mission. Just being in solitude and doing his own bhajan was not why he had advented into this world. This is not why Mahaprabhu had sent him here. He had work to do for Mahaprabhu, to spread his mission everywhere. And eventually, at age 44, he took sannyas in front of a picture of his spiritual master. Again, something that is not to be imitated. And he took on the name Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. By this time, he was already renowned as a very, very great scholar. His reputation had spread far and wide, not just because he was a scholar, but also because he was very bold. In earlier years, he had represented his father at many meetings. At one meeting in particular, which is very well known, there was a gathering of Brahmanas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was old at that time and requested his young son to go there. And he went and spoke very strongly about how a Vaishnava was superior to a Brahmana, and how the caste Brahmanas, that is those who were born in Brahmin families, did not automatically get the right or the privilege or the position or the adhikar or the eligibility to become gurus merely because of that. One has to become a pure devotee of Krishna. Only a devotee of Krishna is actually eligible for doing such things. So that was the established norm of the day. But he spoke out very strongly against these established norms because they were incorrect. And he spoke from the scripture, quoting numerous verses from the Shastra. And people were astonished to see how boldly and in such a scholarly way that he established the devotional conclusions. So then when he took sannyas at the age 44, and that very day, he installed the Guru Gauranga and Radha Krishna deities at a place in Calcutta, which was later to become the headquarters of his Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt. And the main branch of that was called the Sri Chaitanya Mutt. And from that day on, then there was no looking back in terms of the preaching activities and the establishment of the Gaudiya Mutt. Eventually, by the time he passed away, he had established no less than 64 Gaudiya Mutts all over the country. He had sent a few of his disciples to London, and even though they were not very successful, but the fact that his vision was to preach internationally the message of Mahaprabhu is itself very significant. And we also understand this from knowing the pastime when Srila Prabhupada, at that time he was Abhay Charan Day, first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in one Ultadanga junction on the terrace of the building where Bhaktisiddhanta was delivering lectures to his followers. And at the very first meeting, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told him, "You are a young educated man. You should speak in the English language in the Western countries and spread the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." And Srila Prabhupada said, I was thinking at that time that this is just the first time I'm meeting him, and he has given me a mission for a lifetime. Srila Prabhupada was unable to follow those instructions in the early years because he was a householder, he had young children, and he had responsibilities. But he never forgot those instructions, and he kept them close to heart. And eventually, he took Vanaprastha, lived in Vrindavan, traveled to Delhi, published a Back to Godhead magazines, would distribute them, and was translating and commenting upon the first 2 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he also wrote his Easy Journey to Other Planets and so on. And this mood that Srila Prabhupada had for writing books, printing and publishing such literature and distributing them widely came from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. One time when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was in Radha Kund, and many of the devotees were out on parikramas and so on, Srila Prabhupada stayed to hear Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, yes, I have heard, I have noted. He hears attentively. Later when they were walking on the banks of the Radha Kund, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said prophetically, because he had just heard news of what was happening in the mutt in Calcutta, he said, there will be fire. Agun habe in Bengali, he said, there will be fire, because my disciples are quarreling among themselves about who will take which room in the ashram, in the mutt. And Bhaktisiddhanta was not happy about this at all. And he said, then better we tear down the temple instead of building temples and ashrams. Let's sell every brick, and with the money that we get, let us print books and distribute widely. So Bhaktisiddhanta called it the Brihat Mridanga. And Srila Prabhupada also popularized this term, Brihat Mridanga, which means the big or the great Mridanga. Our Yuga Dharma, as propagated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is the Sankirtana movement, the congregational chanting of the holy names, which involves loud singing with musical instruments like the Mridanga. But when we chant the Mridanga, or we chant and use the Mridanga, how far will the noise of the Mridanga go? Maybe 1 block down, 2 blocks down. Even if you have a loudspeaker or microphone, how far can it go, the sound? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, we must have a printing press. And when we publish books and distribute them widely for hundreds and thousands of miles, the message of the Sankirtan movement will spread far and wide. So he called the printing press as the Brihat Mridanga. In fact, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur himself had been trained as a young boy in proofreading, because he inherited this spirit from his father, who was also constantly writing books. Prodigious output of books from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Every day he would write for hours, even though he was a busy district magistrate and had a large family to maintain. He did all these responsibilities very ably. So even when he was less than 10 years old, he had begun proofreading for his father. He had learned the workings of the printing press. In those days, it was very painstaking and laborious to print a book. Now everything seems so easy with all these user-friendly softwares for desktop publishing and so on and so forth, self-publishing. You can do so many things just sitting at home. But in those days, printing was a big deal. It involved so much of hard work. And then the typing, and then you had to make changes, proofread, type the whole thing again. Very, very laborious. So he learned all these skills of how a printing press worked and how proofreading was to be done, the different types of notations when you proofread. So he called it the Brihat Mridanga. That is why Srila Prabhupada called book distribution as Sankirtan. It's interesting, many devotees do not realize the significance of the term Sankirtan when it comes to book distribution. Actually, Sankirtan means chanting of the holy names of the Lord loudly. So why is book distribution called Sankirtan? Many people say, I went out on Sankirtan today. What they mean is that we went out to distribute books today. Because of this idea that Bhaktisiddhanta introduced, that is the Brihat Mridanga. So the Brihat Mridanga, you do Kirtan. So the message goes out far and wide. So Prabhupada also was inspired by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's example and urged all his followers to also distribute books widely. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta went on speaking boldly, demolishing many myths that had been established by the caste Goswamis, by the upper sampradayas, those who had actually deviated from Mahaprabhu's pure and sublime teachings, but were still claiming to be Vaishnavas. A very, very important contribution or a change that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made was that he introduced Daivi Varnashrama into the Vaishnava Dharma or the practice of Vaishnavas. Prior to his time, even during Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, what to speak of the early Acharyas, Vaishnavas meant Paramhamsa Vaishnavas, like the Babajis. And the Diksha was usually that kind of a Diksha, like the 6 Goswamis had. Barring a few examples like Mahaprabhu himself or Prabodhananda Saraswati and so on, there was no sannyas. There was just Babaji Diksha. They would not wear saffron cloth. The Vaishnavas would wear white cloth. They were renunciants basically. And they would wear one cloth that came up to the knees and another cloth for the upper part of the body, the Uttariya. And they were essentially very exalted souls. So Vaishnava meant someone extremely exalted, Paramahamsa. But as time went on, many people misused that Vaishnava term, that position. They wore the dress of a Vaishnava. They started accepting and giving Vaishnava Paramhamsa Diksha, even though they were not qualified for it. And they started indulging in many illicit activities, many immoral activities. And thus they brought the movement of Mahaprabhu to great disrepute. And in fact, the term Vaishnava was not considered a good term. There was a time in history, sometime before Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where if you said somebody is a Vaishnava, it was like saying that he is a hippie or he's something strange. He's not something good. So such was the disrepute into which the Vaishnavas came in, the Vaishnava Dharma came into. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur started that process of reviving it, of Vaishnava Dharma, and Bhaktisiddhanta continued nicely. So he saw that everything was now, had so much deviated from the pure teachings of Mahaprabhu that now it was time to establish some morality and some conduct and some standards. So he took a humble position. He said, I am not a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava means Paramahamsa. I am just an ordinary follower of the Vaishnava, of the Varnashrama Dharma. I am just an ordinary aspirant for spiritual perfection. So therefore, I will take sannyas. So the purpose of taking sannyas in the Vaishnava Dharma is not to exhibit that one is advanced, but rather to exhibit that one is very humble and one has become a servant of the devotees, of the Acharyas. To show that Vaishnava is very exalted, Paramhamsa, but I am just a follower of Varnashrama Dharma. I am still within Varnashrama. That's within the three modes of material nature. And we are following the principles of Vaishnavism. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talked about a Daivi Varnashrama system. He introduced certain principles from the Varnashrama Dharma into the lives of Vaishnavas. So he introduced the saffron cloth, which had not been there before for the Vaishnavas. He introduced the Brahmacharya ashram and the Sannyas ashram, which had not been there earlier for the Vaishnavas. He introduced giving Diksha with the Gayatri mantra, which was formerly there only for the caste Brahmanas, and the Vaishnavas wouldn't generally involve themselves so much with it. And this way he started giving Pancharatrika Diksha, the initiation of following the Pancharatrika system. There was an uproar at that time from the caste Brahmana community. But very boldly and based on Shastra, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta refuted all these objections. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada also, when he went to the West, he had to make so many changes. He gave the Brahman initiation and the Gayatri mantra to ladies. He personally performed the 5 sacrifices for the first few marriages because no one else was there to perform these marriages. So Srila Prabhupada also was revolutionary like his own spiritual master. Eventually in 1937, January, when he was almost 63, 1 month less than being 63 years of age, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at 5:30 in the morning on this tithi today, as he departed from this world. But the day before that, or a few days before that, he called together all his disciples, knowing that he would be departing very shortly from this world, and gave them many wonderful instructions and said, never leave the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Raghunath, never leave devotional service, whatever may happen. And all these instructions were basically instructions to be staunch in their personal sadhana and practice of Krishna consciousness, and secondly, to be very staunch in their missionary zeal and spirit of sacrificing themselves for propagating Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Many, many sublime instructions that he gave. And he begged them to remain steadfast in these two things. And then when the time came in the morning, prior to his departure, he asked his disciples to sing some bhajans, and particularly he asked for the singing of Sri Rupa Manjari Pada. That's a very beautiful and important bhajan, and therefore for us actually as Gaudiya Vaishnavas following as Rupanugas, this is very important. And it is significant that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur chose this bhajan to sing. Because we are not directly servants of Krishna. That privilege is only for Srimati Radharani and her close associates of Krishna in the spiritual world. Srimati Radharani also is served by many manjaris. Her main Sakhi is Lalita Sakhi and also Vishakha Sakhi. Lalita Sakhi has many manjaris, and Rupa Manjari is one of those manjaris who assist Lalita Sakhi. One of the chief manjaris or assistants. And that same Rupa Manjari has come as Rupa Goswami. And we are all followers of Rupa Goswami. We are Rupanugas. So for us, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Rupa Manjari or Rupa Goswami is very important. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was remembering this very much. And I think it was Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada's godbrother, who was asked by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to sing this bhajan. And prior to that also, in Puri, he was constantly chanting prayers like the Nija Nikata Nivasam Dehi Govardhanatvam the prayers of Raghunath Das Goswami petitioning Govardhan to grant him eternal residence near him. So he was constantly chanting like this in the mood of Vrindavan. And then finally at 5:30 in the morning, then he returned to the spiritual world, entered into the eternal pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And thus came to an end the earthly pastimes of an extraordinary associate of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna, who had been sent here with the purpose of revitalizing, rejuvenating and spreading the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada's mood, his mission, his techniques, his spirit, they actually came from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Like father, like son. So Srila Prabhupada was the ideal son or the spiritual son or the disciple of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And it is Srila Prabhupada who is urging every one of us in all the generations to come to follow in these footsteps and also practice Krishna consciousness very rigorously and to preach very vigorously. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Disappearance Day Festival ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes. The question is that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and also Srila Prabhupada cautioned us against mingling intimately with the Babajis in Vraj, especially in Radhakund and so on. But today many devotees do that. So what stand should we take? Yes, this mingling they do at their own peril, at their own spiritual peril. The formula that Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada gave is just respect them at a distance. We shouldn't associate with them. We should just follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings, his mood, and be faithful to the house or the institution that he set up. And that is sufficient for us to go back to Godhead. We do not need anything more. Right? Yes. The question is that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced Daivi Varnashrama. So what is the difference between the Daivi Varnashrama and the Varnashrama that was there before? I remember one Bhagavatam class, we had a long discussion on this. I will just repeat that, maybe one year ago, maybe here. As far as my understanding goes, there are different types of Varnashramas which we can speak about. One we may call the classical or the traditional Varnashrama, which is most often spoken about in the scriptures. Even in the Bhagavatam, for example, in the 7th canto, we see Narad Muni describing the duties of the various ashramas, varnas, and so on. And in the classical or traditional Varnashrama, there is a mixture of a variety of injunctions. There is a karmakanda mixture, there is some devotional service as well. So although the purpose of even the traditional varnashrama is eventually to come to the platform of pure devotional service, but generally the principles of pure devotional service are not so clearly or forcefully emphasized. They are there, but they're also there along with other injunctions like worship of the forefathers, worship of the demigods, and so on and so forth. So there are karmakanda elements also very strongly present within the traditional or classical varnashrama system. The idea being that by following that, because there are elements of devotional service there, gradually one will be able to get elevated and come to the point of pure devotional service to Krishna exclusively. In the traditional varnashrama system, also there was a principle of one's varna being determined by one's qualification and qualities rather than simply by birth. However, as time passed, especially in Kali Yuga, the principle of birth began to get prominence. So people started claiming that they were Brahmanas or Kshatriyas or whatever simply because they were born in a family of Brahmanas or Kshatriyas. So when the birth started taking priority and became the criterion for deciding one's varna or claiming to be of a certain varna, then that became the Asuri Varnashrama, the demoniac Varnashrama, where merely on the basis of one's birth, one claimed affiliation or belonging to a certain varna. So that is not correct. The Asuri Varnashrama is a deviation from the original Varnashrama. Now, we also have the pure Vaishnava Dharma. The pure Vaishnava Dharma is exclusively Bhagavad Dharma, just hearing and chanting about Krishna and nothing else. No need of any varnas, no need of any ashramas, no karma kanda. Just hear and chant about Krishna, pure love of Godhead. Paramhamsas, that's beyond the Varnashrama Dharma. It's the goal of the Varnashrama Dharma. But it is very hard to be situated purely on that platform for the people of this world. Very few people can be on that platform. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur decided, instead of people trying to imitate people in the pure Vaishnava Dharma and then creating havoc in the society, better that we recognize we are still within the three modes, we are struggling with the three modes, and we should institute the certain principles of the traditional Varnashrama Dharma and keep the Vaishnava Dharma very prominent as the goal and the main process. So that is the Daivi Varnashrama. In short, the Daivi Varnashrama system is that system of Vaishnava Dharma where the principles of Varnashrama are imported or incorporated. But only those principles are imported which are favorable to the promotion of Vaishnava Dharma, or at best, which are not opposed to the principles of Vaishnava Dharma. Those principles that are opposed to Vaishnava Dharma are not brought within the fold of the Daivi Varnashrama. Like, for example, worship of the demigods as a regular established feature, and so on and so forth. Right? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, therefore, he revived this Daivi Varnashrama system, and we are following that. So for us as devotees within ISKCON, for example, we are very clear that the object of our life is pure devotional service to Sri Krishna. We follow in the footsteps of our acharyas. At the same time, we do also utilize certain elements from the Varnashrama system. We have brahmacharis, we have grihasthas. Well, vanaprastha may not be so prominent, but we have sannyasis. And they're all expected to follow certain rules and regulations that are meant for these varnas in the traditional Varnashrama system. But we take only those rules as is favorable for the development of Krishna consciousness in this day and age. So that is the practical understanding of Daivi Varnashrama for us today. Okay? Right? Okay, yes. The Babajis are on which platform? It depends. If they are genuine Babajis, if they are genuinely Paramhamsas, then they are on the topmost platform. But if they are not, then we should avoid their company. But even otherwise, for us it is hard to know who is who. So better to follow the instructions of our acharyas, just keep away. Just offer respect from a distance, because we don't know who is exalted, who is not exalted. So just best we follow Srila Prabhupada's teachings, associate with devotees within our movement, and there is plenty of scope to make advancement and become pure devotees. All right? Yes. Yes. The question is that, is Vimala Devi the same as Parvati Devi? Yes. Parvati Devi or Durga Devi, she is a pure devotee of the Lord. And she is a form of Yogamaya. Yogamaya appears within this world as a reflection in the form of Parvati or Durga, who is also a pure devotee. Both Durga and her husband Lord Shiva are pure devotees. They are pure Vaishnavas. Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.